ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ। ਸਾਰੇ ਸੁਣਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਮਾਕਾਂਤ ਡਾਵਰ ਦੇ ਟਾਕ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਮਸਕਾਰ, ਆਦਾਬ, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ, ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ। ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਟਾਕ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਮਿਸ ਤਾਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ। ਮਿਸ ਟੈਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਕਾਫੀ ਅਰਸੇ ਤੋਂ ਫਰੈਜ਼ਨੋ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਔਰ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਅਤੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਟੈਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਿਓਰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਟੈਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਸਾਧ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਅਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ। ਔਰ ਫਰੈਜ਼ਨੋ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਮੁਹਿੰਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਚੱਲੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਔਰਗੈਨਿਕ ਫੂਡ ਦੀ, ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕਿ ਮਿਸ ਟੈਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਨੂੰ ਏਅਰ 'ਤੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਈਏ, ਉਸ ਦਾਤੇ ਅੱਗੇ, ਉਸ ਪਰਮਾਤਮਾ ਅੱਗੇ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਅੱਗੇ, ਭਗਵਾਨ ਰਾਮ, ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨ, ਬੁੱਧਾ ਜੀ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਹੋ, ਜੀਸਸ, ਅੱਲਾਹ ਤਾਲਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਰਥਨਾ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਰੂਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਸ ਵੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਦਬ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਿਰ ਝੁਕਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਉਸ ਰੱਬ ਦੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਰਥਨਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦੇ ਦਿਨ ਚੰਗੇ ਹੋਣ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਨੀਵਾਰ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਆਪਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੋਵੇ, ਔਰ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਹੀ ਟਾਕ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਜਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਹਰ ਹਫਤੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸ਼ਨੀਵਾਰ ਅਤੇ ਇਤਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਹੋਸਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਇਸ ਹੋਸਟ ਰਮਾਕਾਂਤ ਡਾਵਰ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਹੁਣ ਤਾਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਨੂੰ। Good morning, Mr. Hamilton. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you, Paji.
What do you do?
I actually do a number of things. I am an organic farmer, and we have an organic restaurant, and we have 6 children, so I wear a lot of hats.
So you have a handful work to do every day.
That's true.
Okay. What brought you towards organic food and activist in Fresno area?
Do you know, we were living in Fresno, and I already had 4 children. My youngest were 15-year-old twins, and after our eldest daughter, Laura, got married, then I got pregnant again. So I was almost at a grandmother stage because I was thinking, she's married, she's going to have children soon. And so I took a course at the Institute for the Achievement of Human Potential, and they work with people all across the world, in Japan, in India, in all kinds of places. And the main thrust of their work is to make brain-injured children well. But I had also heard that they helped just normal children. And so when I was pregnant, I had a lot of time, and I read a lot of books from their institute, and I didn't really understand a lot of the information they were presenting, because they were saying that children under the age of 3 could look at a piece of paper, and if it had 96 dots on it, without counting any of them, they would just know that. And I didn't understand how somebody's brain could work like that, and that we don't read letters, we read words. So I went and I took a course there, and it cost me quite a bit of money. I had to rent a house to stay in while I was there, and I took the course, and we flew back. And while I was there, one thing that they did that surprised us is they told us that we had to go home and we had to eat all organic food. And I was a little bit upset, because I thought, who are you to talk to me about my health, you know? And they said that if our children became autistic, ADHD, diabetic, all of these diseases, it would be our fault, because they had told us what to do that was different. And so I went back home, and I was pregnant now again. So I had a 1-year-old boy, and I was pregnant with my daughter Sarai, and I was sick all the time. And the doctors, they just said, well, you're old, you're having babies, that's how you're going to feel, you're sick. But I went back home, and I did the shopping, and I changed our diet to organic. And in 3 days, in just 72 hours, they also had this elimination diet where you weren't supposed to eat wheat and citrus and all these other things. So I stopped eating those, and I felt great. And after the 3 months was over, they said that you're allowed to bring one thing back at a time. And I discovered that I was allergic to citrus, so I can't drink lemon juice or orange juice or grapefruit juice, and I'm allergic to eggs, which, you know, they have in a lot of products that we buy. There's eggs in it. So that's kind of what switched me over. So we changed our whole farm. We had 20 acres of raisins, and we changed it. We pulled out a lot of the grapes, and we started to plant our own vegetables, and we planted cherries, and we started to grow everything organic, because I didn't want to go to the store and buy all these things when I had land and I could grow it myself.
So you became a organic grower in this area.
That's right.
Okay. And as you mentioned, since few years you are working on that. You became pregnant.
Yes.
You had another pregnancy,
Yes.
and you learned that organic food can make a huge change.
Absolutely. And not just with children, but with everybody, but especially with children and older people, because their bodies and their immune systems are younger or older, then their food needs to be cleaner. Because, like, if you and I eat something, we'll have one effect. But they say children eating that same thing are 4 times more likely to get sick.
Because
than we
they
are.
have baby immune system.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, you just wrote a book,
Yes.
and it is not published yet.
Right. It's published in e-format, but not
Right.
in a print copy.
Not in a print copy. I looked into this book last night and few days ago when you emailed it to me. Last night I went over this book and I learned something new while talking to you, reading along with you. What made you to write that book?
Well, I came
And
to.
I have a request, Miss Tara.
Yes.
Keep your answers short
Okay.
because I want to go over so many different things.
Okay. I came to Canada when I was 6 years old, and I didn't know how to speak English. And so they put me in school for retarded children.
But you speak good English now.
I do now, but
You are not 6 years old anymore.
I am not 6 years old. And so they put me in school for retarded children, and I was in retarded classes until I was in grade 3 when I had learned to speak English. And it was a culture shock. And then when I grew older, then I learned English perfectly, and nobody thought that I was really an immigrant. And I married somebody who is white, and that was a bit of a culture shock. And so really, now that I'm older and I look back at my upbringing, I see how much benefit there was to having Indian parents. And so I wanted to talk about that culture clash that so many of us live in. We live in a country where people are racist, and we want to fit in. But at the same time, their culture just breeds disease and problems and really materialism. And so we have to cherish what we were brought up with.
That's good. So my next question goes, I know we worked on these questions, what we will talk, but as we are talking, I want to concentrate a little bit to our Indian community. When we migrate to these countries, we look for really that type of food where we need to spend less money.
Yes.
And we want to garnish our food with the food types we have in India, like sweets. But our community doesn't realize that in those foods, lot of pesticides, lot of chemicals are added, and we do not read those instructions or ingredients, how that is made, what ingredients are added in that. And we ponder on candies. Our children, they go to stores, eat a lot of candies, and we buy for them. What do you want to talk about that? Why organic food is better than those foods we go to? Sometimes even my own friends, they tell the cauliflower you are buying from a Costco or some other places, the same cauliflower, same company, same type of stuff you can buy from 99-cent store. What are the differences between these foods, and what kind of ingredients that community needs to look into that? Please.
In some ways, they're absolutely correct that the cauliflower they're getting at the 99-cent store is the same as the grocery stores because most food is chemically processed. But if we think about it, in India, they used to say sadda khana, and it was simple food, really. And we come to this country and we feel rich because our foods are so rich and they're so abundant. In India, if we made money, most of that money was spent on food and maybe a little bit of clothing. But here we come to this country and we drive around in very expensive Mercedes-Benzes and BMWs and Toyotas and Hondas, and we have big screen TVs and the latest furniture. And yet, when it comes to food, we are so cheap that we will not buy fruit when it is too expensive. We wait for it to go on sale. And yet, in India, they used to come through the village and they would sell us mangoes and they would sell us bananas and they would sell us these things. And that was kind of our candy. That was, I mean, you went to somebody's house, you brought them a bunch of bananas. You brought them some apples. You brought them some oranges. You know, that was your gift. And you come here and people, they buy you chocolate or they buy you cookies and they buy you things like this. And in India, we made our own sugar. You know, we would take the ganna and we would press the juice out of the sugar cane and we would make the sugar. And what we don't know scientifically is that sugar was only 37 on the glycemic index. That's lower than all these artificial sweeteners and everything. And we would roll that into balls and we would keep it for the entire year. We would eat just the sugar sometimes as a sweet. But here, the sugar is so processed, and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is, because it changes the sugar from 37 on the glycemic index to something that your body really kind of sees as a poison. Like corn syrup. When you think of corn syrup, you go to the, McDonald's, they have 99-cent soda, and it's huge. But if I gave you that much water and I said, Baji, drink this much water, you would look at it and you'd be like, oh my goodness, if I drink that much water, I can't eat anything after. So the question is, how can you drink that much soda and still be hungry? It's because of the sugar they use. The sugar actually goes and tells your brain that you're hungry.
There is another factor that these companies, what they do, they manipulate. They want to sell you soda in 99 cents, and if you are going to buy a bottle of water from a retailer, they also sell you 99 plus CRV or sometimes $1.29. So water is expensive than the soda.
Absolutely.
So they are adding sugar in that soda and they want to make you to buy other stuff. It is manipulation.
Well, it is manipulation, but you know something my dad said? My dad was a
priest.
Yeah,
Was a priest.
Yeah, he would, whenever I would leave and go and sit down to watch TV, he'd say, do you have nothing to read? Do you have nothing to do except watch TV? And everybody else would be watching TV. He'd always pick on me. And I'd be like, what's the big deal? And he said, you know, the government is controlling your mind with what they have on TV. And sometimes we don't think about that, but when it comes to our food, think about it. If everybody who drove a car got into car accidents, we could not buy car insurance anymore. And so the government has given us an insurance policy. It's called our pension, right? And so they're saying when you're 65 years old, we will give you money to help you. But the basis of insurance is that you pay and you never collect. So in the 1930s, they started the pension plan, and 1 in 30 people lived to be 65 to get that money. The other
what about others?
The other 29 all died. And that's when they started it. And today, do you know what happens? 1 in every 3 people today collect that pension plan. And so it's not good for the government for us to live this long. We don't think about it logically, but they're betting that we're going to die by the time we're 65.
Absolutely, I do agree with you, but look into that. They do not have any plan if someone dies and he had a pension plan to send that money into the heaven.
No, and forget about heaven. What about their children or their families?
Or in hell.
No, nobody gets that money.
So they don't have any bank account in heaven and hell.
No, and they don't have any bank accounts
so
here
who
for the living.
keeps that money?
Yeah, exactly. The government does.
Okay.
So their whole goal is to get you to pay, because you have to work for 10 years and pay into the system. So they want you to work and pay into the system. And how we know the government is behind our food is, I said corn syrup. Corn is one of the most heavily subsidized crops there is. The government actually pays farmers to grow corn. Corn is also the most genetically modified crop. So science goes in and they make corn so that if a worm eats the corn, the worm will die. But then they take that corn and they make corn syrup and all kinds of other corn products, and they put it inside our sodas, inside all of this stuff, and they give it to us. Well, if the worm died eating it, what do you think it's doing?
But humans survived.
Well, we survive for a little while, but then we get cancer and we
Absolutely.
get disease. And that's why they're saying that our food so especially affects young people and old people.
So you are telling us, you are telling the audience, you are telling the listeners that these modified foods are dangerous for our health.
Not just the modified, but also the pesticided foods. And so the cheap food, really you should see, anytime food is too cheap, it should warn you. Why is this food this cheap? Because in India, it made sense. If you went and you bought gobi, it was like 8 or 10 rupees, 10, 12 rupees. And then if you went to buy a soda, it was 45 rupees. And it made sense because the soda was in a glass bottle. It had to be made in a factory. It had to have people working on it. Cauliflower, you put the seed in the ground, you watered it. So how is it here, cauliflower sometimes is $2 or $3, but I can buy my kids chocolates and chips for less than $1?
That is a point, and it is a thinkable point. So you want to tell our listeners that they should buy organic food or grow their own food to have a good health.
Well, yeah, and that's why my book is called Cook, Grow, Love. Because really there's 3 things that are missing in our society today. 1, people don't cook. And, I have to admit that I fell prey to that because if I can go and I can buy something that's already made for 99 cents at McDonald's, a burger or fries or a soda, then if my kids are out and that makes them happy, why wouldn't I just do that? And so many people do exactly that. But there's something about cooking. Like young people today, they don't think roti is a very fascinating thing. And I see even older people, they're buying bread. Instead of waking up in the morning and making paronta like they used to or making roti, they take toast and they put eggs on it or they do whatever they want, jam, or whatever they do. And they don't look into that bread. Like in India, if I gave you a roti that was a day old, you'd say, behi roti. I'm not going to eat that. But the bread, I took a loaf of bread. It's still actually, I have it. 3 months later, it looks brand new. So what did they put in that bread? That 3 months later, it hasn't changed.
Preservatives?
Well, I think it's beyond that. Because if you do any kind of research in yogurt, we used to make our own yogurt. Now we don't make our own yogurt. We buy it. And they just discovered that they're putting silver in our yogurt. Silver, particles of metal. In our yogurt, in our milk, in our dairy, and it's so small, the particles, that they don't have to put it on the label. But the reason why they put it in our food is to keep everything white. So that the milk stays white, the yogurt stays white. And
So, in other words, these cheese products, these yogurt products, these mawa products, which is khoya and other stuff like manufactured by these big companies, they have these all the particles and they have cannot even think beyond that. They have so many chemicals in that.
And you know how we can tell, Baji? And it never really occurred to me, but when I grew up living at home, my mom, she was a chef at a restaurant, so she knew how to make everything. And she would make the sweets, the Indian sweets, and she would make chutney. But we would have our own sugar, and she would put it in the water. We would make our chutney, and she would always send us to a farm to buy milk right from the farmer, and it was raw milk. Now, in the entire United States, raw milk is illegal.
You cannot sell that.
You cannot sell it unless you have like a dairy like Organic Pastures. And so for a half gallon of milk, it's $8.50.
And you can buy in $4 2 gallons or $4.50 or $5.
So we're all drinking this dairy that the government pasteurized. And they heated and they did all this stuff to it. And it actually makes us arthritis. Like it makes arthritis in our bodies. It takes the calcium out of our bodies. But we think that the milk that we're buying
is
at the store...
giving us calcium.
And we think it's the same as we had in India. But in India, we had an animal that we fed greens and that produced milk that was good for us. And here, we don't know who made our milk. And you drive by the cows, and you can't even stand their smell. They stink. I mean, their poo, they're standing ankle high in their own mud and manure. And yet we think their milk is good for us?
Because they are fed chemicals in their feed.
And also, they're not allowed to walk around. They're not on green grass. They're fed corn. That same corn they're feeding us, they're feeding the cows. And if they didn't kill the cows in the end, the cows would die because they're allergic to corn. Their stomachs can't digest corn. And so in India, we used to give them grass. They actually need greens. We would call them patte deniya janvaranu, right? We loved those animals. And those animals, then the food they produced was good for our health. And so what I've done in my book is people, they hear this stuff, but it doesn't reach their heart. They know it in their brain, but when it comes to the store and they've got their dollars in their hand, instead of spending, $10 and getting stuff, it would cost them $30 or $40, and they don't want to part with that money. So what I've done in my book is I've come up with stories. And like the first one is passion makes ordinary extraordinary. And it shows that if we really believe in something, you know, and even if it's something simple, like a student really believes that they're going to do well at school, it's a simple thing, but they do it with such energy. I mean, everybody looks at that kid and they say, look at that kid. He does his schoolwork every single day. He does whatever. And parents, let's say you're a mother and you're going to make sure you have a garden. And the taste, if we grow a sorghum in our garden, it has taste. It's kind of sweet, almost a little bit like an apple.
So we go to picking on me now because I told you that how I was peeling shalgams last night.
No, actually, I was thinking about my husband. My husband was in India, and there was a girl, and she was eating something, and he said, what is she eating? And I said, she's eating a turnip. Look at the purple top. And he said, no, turnips, they're nasty. Why would you eat them? And I said, no, here they're not. And he said, get me one. So I got him one. I peeled it. He ate it. He ate it like an apple. He said it was delicious. We came back to Kerman, went to the grocery store. He saw the turnip looked the same. He said, buy me that. I bought it for him, and he said, this tastes like cardboard. And I said, well, because it's not organic. And that's what we do is we go to the grocery store. The food tastes like cardboard, our fruits and vegetables. So we stop buying them, and we buy the cookies and chips instead.
Tara, I am going to switch my questions into a different direction now. The reason, when I read this book last night, sitting with you on the table, it did touch my heart. In our culture, in Indian culture, people, they think that the ladies who serve the meal, it is their duty. Ladies who cook at home, even ladies, they think that they are born to do that. The ladies, our sisters, our daughters, our mothers, nieces, whatsoever, they think they do not have a respect. When they cook for us, sometimes our own ladies in our own families, they tell us that it is just because we are ladies, you guys think that we are serving you. But when I read this book's introductory chapter last night, as I stated, it did touch my heart. Tell me about why the ladies serve, cook, and not eat sitting next to you on the table. What is the reason? I want to listen from you. I have 3 questions. As we hear from our ladies, from our cultural people, is that love, slavery, or punishment? And I know you have very well explained in your book. And please, while talking on the air, slow down. That I want that our listeners can catch your each and single word of this heart-touching passion that you brought in your book. Please.
Well, the chapter you're talking about is called Live Not on Bread Alone. And it's because when I think of love, I think of roti. You know, I always see my mother, and she was at the stove, and she would make roti. And we would all sit down. And first, you know, my sisters and I, we would help her. And my dad and my brothers, they would sit down and they would eat the roti. And then she would feed us. And then we would stand up and we would finish making the roti for her. And when I moved to Canada, we heard about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on bread. And we thought that was just the best thing. But my mom refused.
It is easy to cook, to make, to eat. We don't need to cook peanut jelly butter.
No, we don't. But my mom, she would not buy us bread. And so we tried everything we could. But she said, no, that bread is old. Naan is bad for you. It's made of midda. And so I'm not going to buy you bread. And so I learned how to bake bread. And that's when I realized that bread and roti are 2 different things. Every single time we make a roti, it's only flour and water. It's how we feel when we make it. Like you can tell if you go to somebody's house. I remember being in India, and I have a tai and I have a masi. But my masi is also my tai. And she, when she made roti, she never counted. She never did anything. They were always small and round and beautiful. And when I went to my Thai's house, she would make them big and fat. And, she said, well, you eat less. You get full faster. It's the same thing.
Yes.
And my mom, she never felt that way. She always said, you make roti small, you make them round, you make them perfect. And one day, I ate 23 rotis. I was in India, and I ate 23 of them. And my Thai went and told everybody in the village that I had eaten 23 rotis. And in those 3 months, I had eaten...
So you ate those 23 rotis at one time?
At one time, I did.
Wow.
I have a big appetite. And my
You
mom...
are very skinny, Tara.
I am skinny.
How did you absorb that 23 rotis?
Well, I only ate when I was hungry.
Or you were sticking those rotis in your pocket?
I don't know. But my Masi had been cooking for me for months and had never told anybody how much roti I ate. And one day, my Thai made roti for me, and she told everybody in the pind that I had eaten 23 rotis. And to this day, when I go back to India, I'm like 50 years old, they're all like, oh, you ate those 23 rotis. And I'm like, yes, I did. But, in Canada, people used to say, are you your family's slave? Why don't you sit down and eat with them? That's how it's supposed to be. But, roti, if it sits even for 5-10 minutes, it's not fresh anymore, right? Like you want it to be hot when you give it to the person.
No, that's not true, Tara. If you look into the television ads, Amitabh Bachchan says, buy this atta and you can make rotis this morning and you can eat these rotis after 3 days, just warming them up in a microwave. These are fresh. What is that story?
Oh, that's the same. They're doing to our rotis what they did to our bread. They're putting dough conditioners in it. And so really they're adulterating it, because if I think about it, if somebody in India made you roti, there was no doubt that they loved you. If you went to somebody's house, they would give you bananas, they would give you sweets, they would give you cha. That was easy.
Mm-hmm.
But if they made roti for you, it was because they really loved you. And so in the book, I describe...
So you are telling the listeners that if ladies make rotis for the family, they love you. So they make it because of love, not because you are hungry.
Well, that's why I make it, and that's really what I'm trying to connect for women.
That I wanna hear, because that was the main part of talking to our listeners, sending that message that the ladies in our culture, when they cook for you, they cook with passion because they love you, because you are a family member, you are a son, father, brother of that lady, so she wanna feed you with respect, love, and that is the reason that she cooks for you, because she loves you.
Yes, and so I'm going to read you that part from my book, because I was talking...
Read it slowly.
Okay. I said, I cannot tell you what my life would have been without my protectors and helpers, my brothers. The understanding is that fathers will get older and tired, so the brothers are to take care of their sisters, because people are intimidated by their youth and strength. There is an expression that a sister's marriage is established on the head of her brother. The meaning is that your husband will fear being accountable to your brother, so he will treat you right. I know that if I have a problem, I call my brother first and tell my father about the situation once my brother has taken care of it. In America, the bride's father gives her away. In India, the bride's maternal uncles come the night before the wedding, and with much pomp and ceremony, they slip her wedding bracelets onto her arms. They are the only men present at this event, and at my sister's weddings, my mom cried because her brother wasn't there. My eldest brother flew out from Canada so my cousin and he could put on our eldest daughter Laura's bracelets for her wedding. All my brothers gave my mother money so that when Laura and I flew to India to do her wedding shopping, they were contributing in large measure. It is only with this background, then, that you can understand why, when we serve meals, the men are served first. They spend their life taking care of us, so when it comes to food, it is a woman's opportunity to express her love and appreciation. Many people told me that I was being taken advantage of. I wasn't my family's servant. I couldn't put into words the satisfaction I felt in being able to cook for my dad and brothers, delivering perfectly hot, fresh rotis to them that I had poured my love into was wondrous. I wasn't being taken advantage of. I was showing love. With every bite they took that nourished their bodies, they were receiving my love. It was strengthening them to do what they were responsible for, take care of me. I used to think that rotis weren't very exciting, but the flavor of a roti is entirely dependent on the skill and love that the maker puts into it. We use water and flour, nothing else. If you don't add enough water, the dough is firm and tough and won't puff up on the heat, so it will be hard and crisp. Add too much water, and the dough will be soft and difficult to roll out. When the dough is perfect, we roll out perfect circles. And then later I talk about, in our culture, we say that, wasting is a bun. And so my mom, she would never, ever let us waste food that way. So I really think that here people start to think that somebody loves them if they take them to a restaurant. If there's a birthday party or there's something like that, they want food catered because they've bought this American idea that love is when somebody spends money on you and takes you to a restaurant. And in our culture, love is what they had. And so a woman had flour, she had vegetables. So when she made you roti and sabji and roti and dal, she was saying, I love you.
Absolutely, Tara. That I wanted to listen from you. That I wanted that you can convey that message to our listeners. That ladies, they have a special heart for their families, brothers, fathers, children. That when they cook, it is not because they are made to cook food for their families. They do that because they love them.
And it's interesting, my father one time, he's a granti, so he likes to tell lots of stories. So one time he was telling me a story that there was, people walking through a jungle and they saw 2 peacocks dead by a little tiny bit of water. And so he said, what's the story behind this? And he said, well, these 2 peacocks, they're husband and wife. And the water that's before them was only enough to quench the thirst of one of them. And so one would say to the other, tu pila. And the other one would say, nahi, tu pila. And they, tu karke, donne mar gaye. And I said, well, and he said, love.
That's the love.
We would die for love. And I said, and so, Dad, what's your love story? And he looked at me and he said, every night I massage your mother's legs because she can't sleep without it. And every day she cooks me food. So in his mind, her food was an expression of her love. And his massage was an expression of his love. And I was young when he told me the story, and I didn't see the significance in it. And I thought, oh, that's very simple. And now I'm older, and I'm going through menopause, and my feet, they get hurt and they get swollen. And every night my husband takes my feet, and he massages them. And I can tell that he's saying, I love you. And every day I wake up and I cook for him. And I think, without each other to nourish each other, like his dad had cancer. And my husband, he's 54 years old. I don't want to live without him. And so the food I cook for him not only says I love you, but I can make sure that it doesn't have poison in it. It doesn't have chemicals in it, that he's going to live a long time and be there for me. And so now my dad's words don't sound so simple. Really, what else do I need if it wasn't for him? Who would massage my feet so I could stand on them again the next day and work?
The story you just told me, it tells me that your father had a big heart. Look at other granthis. They don't want to touch their wives' feet. In our culture, it is completely different. And if your father said that long back ago when you were young, it means he was a brave person. Bravery doesn't come in fighting with others, making some comments about others. Bravery comes for the right things at the right time. So when your father told you that he massages your mom's legs, he had guts, he had a big heart, and I commend that. And Tara, I talk the right things for the right causes on my radio talk show. Before I will go to the next question, my next question will be, what's the difference between coconut oil, butter oil, desi ghee, and coconut oil? What do you call that?
Tutti da tel.
Tutti da tel, gari da tel. Why people they use vegetable oil, and what's the harm of these vegetable oils? And second question will be about your cooking classes. Okay, before I will get into those questions, I have a couple of messages of my friends. Couple of them are radio hosts. Ladies and gentlemen, my listeners, ਸਰੋਤਿਓ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਰਾਮਾਜ਼ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਦੇ ਦੁਆਰਾ। ਰਾਮਾਜ਼ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਂਡ ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਦਾ ਟੈਲੀਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਹੈਗਾ 492 2870 4922870। ਇੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੈਰਾਲੀਗਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼, ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ, ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ 141 ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਟਰਾਂਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਤੇ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਨਕਮ ਟੈਕਸ ਭਰਵਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ, LLC ਦਾ, S ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ, C ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ਡ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਇਨਕਮ ਟੈਕਸ ਰਿਟਰਨਾਂ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਸਰਵਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਅਰਸੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਫਾਰਮ ਭਰਵਾਉਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਪੈਰਾਲੀਗਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ, ਡਿਊਲੀ ਲਾਇਸੈਂਸਡ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੀ ਪੈਰਾਲੀਗਲ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਡਿਗਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹਾਸਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦਾ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲੈਣਾ, ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਰੀਨਿਊ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ, ਨੋਟਰੀ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਅਤੇ ਨੋਟਰੀ ਮੋਬਾਈਲ ਦੀਆਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲੈਣੀਆਂ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੈਂਡਰ ਸਰਟੀਫਿਕੇਟ ਬਣਵਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਐਮਬੈਸੀ ਤੋਂ, ਰੀਅਲ ਅਸਟੇਟ ਦੀ ਸੇਲ ਅਤੇ ਪਰਚੇਜ਼ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਾਰੋਬਾਰ ਖਰੀਦਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਵੇਚਣਾ, ਖੱਤੇ ਲੈਣੇ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਵੇਚਣੇ ਹੈ, ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਮੀਨ ਦੀ ਖਰੀਦੋ ਫਰੋਖਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਮਾਮਲੇ 'ਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਲਾਇਸੈਂਸਡ ਰੀਅਲ ਅਸਟੇਟ ਏਜੰਟ ਹੈਗੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਰਿਪੇਅਰ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ, ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਐਨਹਾਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ, ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੁਣ ਨਵਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਗਰ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰਕੇ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਅਪਰੂਵਲ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਦਾ, ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਫਾਈਲਾਂ ਬਣ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਅਗਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਗ੍ਰੀਨ ਕਾਰਡ ਹੋਲਡਰ ਨੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ, ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਰਿਪੇਅਰ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਹੈ, ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਐਨਹਾਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ, ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ। ਅਨਲਾਫੁਲ ਡਿਟੇਨਰ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਕਵਰਡ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਲਗਭਗ 3 ਲੱਖ ਤੋਂ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ 3 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚਿੱਠੀਆਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਾਂ 3 ਲੱਖ ਤੋਂ ਲਗਭਗ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੁਝ, ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਦਸਤਾਵੇਜ਼ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਮੰਗੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦਸਤਾਵੇਜ਼ ਉਹ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਦਸਤਾਵੇਜ਼ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਬਰਾਏ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨੀ ਉਹ ਦਸਤਾਵੇਜ਼ ਸਰਟੀਫਾਈਡ ਮੇਲ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਭੇਜੋ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਬੂਤ ਰੱਖੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ। ਅਗਰ ਕਵਰਡ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ। ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਣਾਉਣੀ ਹੈ, ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਡਿਜ਼ੋਲਵ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ, ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਮਿੰਟਸ ਲਿਖਣੇ ਨੇ, ਜਾਂ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈਗਾ ਟਰੱਕਾਂ ਵਾਲੇ ਵੀਰਾਂ ਦਾ, ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹਰ ਸੰਭਵ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੋਸਤ ਹਰਦਿਲ ਅਜ਼ੀਜ਼ ਗੁਰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੇਰਗਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਹੋਸਟ ਵੀ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਰੀਅਲ ਅਸਟੇਟ ਦੀਆਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਖਰੀਦੋ ਫਰੋਖਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਰੀਅਲ ਅਸਟੇਟ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ 349 14 81 'ਤੇ। ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੇਰੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਗਰੋਸਰੀ ਸਟੋਰ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਗਰੋਸਰੀ ਸਟੋਰ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿੰਗਸ ਕੈਨੀਅਨ 'ਤੇ ਚੈਸਟਨਟ 'ਤੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਗਰੋਸਰੀ ਲੈਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ 276 99 99 'ਤੇ। ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛੇ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਹੋਸਟ ਨੇ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਦੀ ਬਾਣੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ। ਕਾਲੇ ਦਾ ਢਾਬਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਢਾਬਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸੈਂਟਰਲ ਐਵਨਿਊ 'ਤੇ 99 'ਤੇ ਗੋਲਡਨ ਸਟੇਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ। ਤਿੱਤਰ ਦਾ ਮੀਟ ਅਤੇ ਬਦਾਮਾਂ ਵਾਲੇ ਵੇਸਣ ਦੇ ਪਰੌਂਠੇ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖਾਣੇ ਅਤੇ ਕਾਲੇ ਦੇ ਢਾਬੇ 'ਤੇ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਟੈਲੀਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਹੈਗਾ 274 66 15 ਅਤੇ 761 1600। ਡੇ ਐਂਡ ਨਾਈਟ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੇ ਪਰਮਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਮੌਂਡ, ਹਰ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿਆਹ ਸ਼ਾਦੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓਗ੍ਰਾਫੀ ਔਰ ਫੋਟੋਗ੍ਰਾਫੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੈਸੇ ਭੇਜਣੇ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਟਰਾਂਸਫਰ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਕਾਰੋਬਾਰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੈਸਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਟਰਾਂਸਫਰ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਕੁਇਕ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ 800 3312 800 3300। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਪਣੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ 'ਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਟੈਰਾ ਹੈਮਿਲਟਨ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਕਿੰਗ ਆਇਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਂਡਾ ਮੀਟ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਾਂਦੇ ਪੀਂਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਮੀਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਾਂਦੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੈਜੀਟੇਬਲ ਕੁਕਿੰਗ ਆਇਲ ਲਈਏ। ਅਤੇ ਟੈਰਾ ਟੈਲ ਮੀ ਵਾਟਸ ਦ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਬਿਟਵੀਨ vegetable cooking oil? Is that a good source of cooking, or we should cook in butter oil and coconut oil? When we go to see doctors, they have different opinions. What is your research? What you wanna address and how you wanna address that issue?
Well, at that course that I took, they said that we should only cook with 3 things. We should cook with grass-fed butter, we should cook with coconut oil, And we should cook with, here Americans, they cook with like bacon fat and animal fat. And there's one thing that all three of those things have in common. If you take even like our ghee cooking oil, when it gets cold, they all become a solid. And when it gets warm, they all liquefy. And they go back and forth, no problem. And so they said that that is a good indication of what the oil will do in your body. So your body is about 93, 96 degrees. And so if you cook with butter or you cook with coconut oil, that oil goes through your body as a liquid and is expelled. In fact, coconut oil helps you to fight Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It never stores in your body as fat. Now, all these other oils, vegetable oil, if you take it and you put it in the fridge, it never becomes solid.
Right.
Right? Canola oil, all these oils, yes, they're vegetable oils, but really think about it. If you take mustard greens, can you make an oil out of them? No. But if you take tutti, automatically the oil starts coming out, right? It's like badam too. I mean, oil starts coming out. And so butter, we made our own butter in India. That wasn't a problem. So how are they making these processed oils? Well, they're not good for you. And because your body's 93 degrees, a lot of these only dissolve when it's 115, 120 degrees, like canola oil. And so it clogs up your arteries. It leads to heart disease, leads to other problems, and it turns toxic. Olive oil is meant to be used cold on salads as a salad dressing. But when we cook with it, then it turns toxic at a high heat. So these are, the book is a combination of stories about our Indian culture, living in America, how that thought affects us, as well as cooking tips and how we can make food. Our salt, we should never use white salt. We should never use white sugar. You know, those kinds of things. And so the website is called Cook, Grow, Love. That's the name of the book, cookgrowlove.com. And you can order an e-copy of the book through our Indiegogo campaign for $1 or $5, whatever you can afford. And also the printed copy will be available by December 10th, and it's $20. And the idea, I hope, is for Indians to read the book themselves and to connect with their culture, to understand why we made the foods that we made, why they were so special, and to preserve our own heritage. But also so that we can gift them. Because we have a lot of friends. Most of us have friends that are American, and they don't understand our culture. So some of our habits and our ways may seem strange to them. And when they read the book, then I hope they're inspired to eat more Indian food and to learn more about our culture.
Sure. And as you stated that these vegetable cooking oils are not good. Next week when you will be here, after reading your book, as I talked to you yesterday, I will bring you for a couple of weeks regularly, talking to our listeners about organic food, about right diet, and how to grow healthy, and how they can have a good health. Looking into these things, my next question goes, these vegetable oils are also not only pasteurized, they are also manufactured through a process, and when it goes into our body, it is kind of a shield, and it stays there for 30 to 40 days, between 30 and 40 days, while these natural oils like coconut oil, butter oil, it doesn't stay for that long period of time in our body. But why doctors they suggest we should not eat butter oil, coconut oil, and other oils?
Well, they go to school for 8 years, and only 24 hours of that 8 years is spent on nutrition. And when you think about it, we've created a bad culture here. Because when do we go to the doctor? We go to the doctor when we're sick. And what do we want the doctor to do? We want the doctor
make
to
us healthy.
Give us a pill. Give us a pill to make us healthy, right?
Right.
In the olden days, people would go to a doctor, the doctor would say, you know, eat this, do this, exercise. And they would do that, and if they got sick, they had a bad doctor. Because the doctor's job was to keep them healthy. And now we pay for sick care. So the only time the doctor's going to see our face is if we get sick. So why are they interested in keeping us healthy? They only make money if we're sick.
So it is an industry that they want to milk money out of their patients?
Well, we've kind of created that because there are natural doctors. They're called naturopaths, and they're expensive. We pay $80, $90. How many people go to that kind of doctor? Nobody. Really, like very few people. We only have like 2 or 3 naturopaths in the entire city. And even our people, how many Punjabis are doctors? And yet what kinds of doctors did they become? They became surgeons and they became doctors. And I mean, they treat sick people. And I sometimes say I'm a pharmacist, but pharmacist spelled F-A-R-M, farm, pharmacist, because I believe that the food that I grow at my farm is the medicine that you need to keep healthy.
Right. Tara, it was a nice talking, and I wanna bring you next week as well to keep our conversation continued. And I hope our listeners they will learn something new that they can stay healthy. And I will also invite some of the doctors from our community that they can talk on this issue and they can support your causes. It is a good work, it is a good campaign that you are running to educate. You also have a restaurants in Fresno area, right?
Yes, it's called Organic Fresno. It's off Highway 99. And so we start all of our food vegan because my dad was a grunty. We never mixed meat and anything together. So all the food that we make at the restaurant always starts off with vegan, no milk and no eggs, no nothing. And then if somebody wants to make it vegetarian, we will add cheese or eggs. And if they want to make it meat, then we cook the meat separate and we add it to their dish. And so that's kind of the idea. And we're very popular amongst tourists. We're actually rated the #1 restaurant on Yelp in Fresno.